seasons into quarters, and now when you look at the Jets, they have 3 straight home games. The first one against the Denver Broncos. Right now they have a 1-3 record, the Jets. But next week after they play the Broncos, they'll be at home against the Indianapolis Colts. We watched the Colts last night against the New England Patriots. Odds makers are calling this a toss-up game. But Greens, on the surface here, the Jets got a tremendous opportunity to maybe get to 3-3 before the Minnesota Vikings come to town. But first things first, and that is the Denver Broncos. New England took down Indianapolis on Thursday Night Football, of course, and the Colts will have 10 days to prepare for the Jets. But like I said, the Jets, everything is focused on the Broncos.
This weekend, the Jets and Broncos play, but if you recall, these two teams actually played towards the end of last season, and that might have been the flattest effort that the Jets put out there last season. It was a 23-0 loss. Josh McCown broke his left hand, but let's just take a second to think about how far these two teams have come since that point. And you don't have to look very far. You just have to look under center with Case Keenum now leading the Broncos offense, and of course, Sam Darnold leading the green and white.
Trevor Siemian is now Kirk Cousins' backup in Minnesota. Like you mentioned, it is Sam Darnold for the New York Jets. The Jets moved up from number 6 overall in the draft to get to number 3. Denver was sitting there at number 5, and they liked Sam Darnold in the pre-draft process. They actually went out to Southern California, had their whole contingency, including John Elway, out there working them out. But the Broncos ended up with Bradley Chubb. I know they're happy having him opposite Von Miller. But the Jets got ahead of the Broncos in the draft, moving up from 6 to 3. Who knows what would have happened if Darnold was still on the board there at number 5 overall. I heard an interview today from John Elway, and he said, you know what, we liked Sam Darnold a lot, and you know, so far early in his career, Sam Darnold has experienced some ups and downs, but he's doing a good job.
You could tell that when Vance Joseph talked about Sam Darnold, he really liked him. You said that he personally worked him out, and not only did Vance Joseph talk about him, but Von Miller, who's debatably the premier pass rusher in the NFL, who we'll dive into a little bit later, he waxed poetic about Sam Darnold. He said, I thought that Darnold was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. He said, in my opinion, from a pass rusher's point of view, I felt like he was the number 1 pick in the draft. He wasn't, but he's definitely playing like it.
Well, he's sending Sam Darnold some roses before Sunday's meeting, but Von Miller is not going to be in a giving mood because he hasn't had any sacks the last 2 games. His premier edge rusher in the National Football League. I think the Jets' offensive line is probably pretty sick of hearing about the edge rushers because each and every week we started this with Robert Quinn and Cameron Wake of the Miami Dolphins, and the following week it was Myles Garrett. Then last week they had to face Jacksonville. I thought Todd Bowles was right in this, is that this is the National Football League. You're facing talented players every Sunday. But Von Miller, when you look at his stats over the course of his career, he might be the top edge guy in the National Football League. He can just do freakish things, so explosive off the edge. And Henry Anderson was talking about him this week. He can bend in ways where you can't even get your hands on him if you're an offensive lineman. So Von Miller continues to get it done. He's still got 4 sacks on the year, but he's been sackless the last couple games. He's going to be coming after Darnold and company. Patrick Mahomes, Monday Night Football, he got the edge against the Broncos defense, and not a lot of quarterbacks can do that. John Elway said this week that Mahomes passed for 192 yards outside of the pocket, breaking, getting outside that perimeter. So you know the Broncos going to try to stay in the rush lanes against a very athletic quarterback himself and Sam Darnold.
Von Miller also talked, not only did he say that Sam Darnold was the number 1 pick in the draft, or he believed, but he also said that as a pass rusher, you want a guy that's going to fall when you get to him, kind of like Peyton Manning. Of course, Von Miller and Peyton Manning were teammates, so he didn't have an opportunity to sack him in Denver, but he said when you get close to him, get ready to touch him, he just falls. That's Peyton. But Sam is not like that. He's going to create space and try to get the ball downfield. He's a playmaker. He's out there to make plays. You talked about Patrick Mahomes. He's also very mobile, and Sam's going to need to use his feet as he has been against Miami, Cleveland, and Denver. But if you thought that Von Miller waxed poetic, well, we talked about Vance Joseph a little bit. Well, let's listen to the head coach himself talk about the Jets quarterback.
Well, we worked him out personally, and he is a athletic guy. He's got a great arm. He can make every throw. He's very intelligent. He's a really, really good athlete. I mean, at the workout, the things he can do physically was really impressive. And you watch him play now, he's doing those same things. He can make big plays down the field. You know, obviously he's a young guy, so he's made some mistakes, but he can go hot and cold. You know, and if he's hot, it's going to be a problem. So, no different than last week. It's a good young quarterback with big time talent, and as those guys play, they get better and better. So you can't discount their talent. You know, they're young, but they're going to play well eventually.
Welcome back to practice today, presented by SiriusXM. Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen live here in Florham Park. Well, you just heard Broncos head coach Vance Joseph talk about Sam Darnold and his interaction with him in the pre-draft process and what makes Sam a good quarterback in this league. Well, through 4 games, Sam's had a mixed bag, some good, some bad. You've seen both. What are you expecting from Darnold in this next quarter of the season?
A very positive vibe coming out of here, a one Jets drive in regards to the quarterback. Sam Darnold said he's seeing things better. He's reading quicker. He liked not the outcome of the game in Jacksonville, but what he was reading in terms of progressions. He's seeing the defense better. Jeremy Bates echoed those sentiments, and I think all in all, the Jets are really happy with this progress after 4 games. And Greens, we might see a breakthrough performance from Sam Darnold here in Week 5 because he took those shots down the field against Jacksonville, a couple near completions. And if the Jets can get some of those explosion plays, that's going to open some things up for the rookie quarterback and the rest of this offense.
I think what you're really hearing from the locker room this week is that things are close. They're almost clicking. The offense is almost clicking, and I think that that's a good sign. And I think really what happens is when you look at Darnold's stats, and if you're a fan, they may not be there and you may not be very impressed, but everyone says film doesn't lie. Well, I've seen a couple film reviews this week where even watching from the press box, I didn't realize what Sam was doing in Jacksonville, staying in the pocket, delivering a strike while taking a blow from these defenders. So I think you're right in that vibes are positive, and I'm excited to see what he does Sunday.
Yeah, and he's also shown a lot of leadership qualities early. He said 1 team, 1 goal earlier in the week when the Jets were talking about what happened post-game after Jacksonville, and he said, I think we're really close, not only offensively, but defense and special teams. I know that score looked lopsided in Jacksonville, and I know Jacksonville rolled up 500 yards on this defense, but when you look at the film and you look some of the communication breakdowns and maybe some individual mistakes, the Jets really don't think they are far away. But this is going to be a test against the Broncos team, who I think is actually playing better than a lot of the experts thought heading into the season.
And this Broncos secondary is very talented nonetheless, with Chris Harris Jr., Darian Stewart, Bradley Roby. I mean, Adam Jones is on the Broncos. Didn't realize he was still in the NFL. Well, he is. Don't worry about it. But
ageless Pac-Man
Jones.
He's
ageless. So Jeremy Bates actually spoke about Sam Darnold earlier this week and talked about what he's seen from the rookie in 4 weeks.
Jeremy, how encouraging was it to see Sam at least attempt to push downfield a little bit?
You know, he continues to get better. I know we're not getting the results, the wins that we want at the end of the day, but each individual has to keep growing. We talk about keep getting better, and I thought the game slowed down for him compared to the Thursday night game. As far as, he was able to see things. He played faster as far as his progression, so it was a step forward and a lot of things for Sam. We still have to capitalize on some big plays, and we got to find a way to win as a quarterback. That's what you get judged on.
How frustrating is it as a play caller? You had plenty of plays where the matchups were really good, but ultimately,
Yeah, frustrating is not the right word, just because, it's like we always talk about. You got every play we're hoping for the best, and if it doesn't work out the way we see it, both execution or anything like that, we got to move on to the next play. So, we had some opportunities. We got to do a better job at executing them. We got to do a better job of calling them at the right situation, and but we got to continue to stay together, keep working, and be together.
Jeremy, do you have a scheme around a guy like Von Miller?
He's an excellent player, one of the best players I've faced against. So you definitely got to know where he's at. It definitely changes your game plan, and you definitely have to require some thinking about where he's on the field on every situation. They move him all over the place. So he's a great player. He's He's quick with his hands, quick with his feet. He loves the game, and it's another challenge and another good opportunity to go against a great defensive end. So,
is he maybe a step above even the better players on the edge?
Definitely, he's definitely one of the top defensive ends that I've faced in my career.
Welcome back to Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen live here in Florham Park as the Jets prepare for the Broncos in their final installment of practice on a Friday morning here. And before we zero in on the Broncos, EA, is that we're going to introduce a new segment every week. We're going to have In the Game with EA, which is essentially a statistical question.
Okay.
And we're going to answer it in the next segment. But
as we're watching Sam Darnold get warmed up here on a fall Friday at One Jets Drive.
Here's the question. You ready?
Yes.
Since 2015, Jets defensive lineman Leonard Williams has 68 quarterback hits. That's 6th in the AFC. Who are the other 5 guys ahead of him? Now, if you have answers, comment live, tweet at us, whatever. EA is going to give his answers at the next segment. But we talked about Von Miller.
The other 5 guys?
The other 5. So we talked about
That's a lot of guys.
We talked about Von Miller a little bit. We talked about Bradley Chubb. We talked about how this Jets offensive line has another tough test, and it never ends. But what really makes Von Miller and Bradley Chubb so effective?
Well, Bradley Chubb's just starting off his NFL career, but we talked about Miller, how he's just probably the greatest explosion guy off the edge in the National Football League right now. Chubb has come in, and I think he gives the Broncos a boost in terms of against the run. He's a stout guy. He's a physical guy. He'll set the edge. He'll turn things back inside, and he's more of your bull rusher. He's a physical specimen, Bradley Chubb, a guy who set all sorts of records at NC State. So when John Elway saw him in the draft, he said, I'm not going quarterback. I'm going to stick with Case Keenum like we talked about before, and I'm going to get a partner for Von Miller. Remember, this is a team that also has Shane Ray still.
Shane Ray is having a rather quiet year. He's been banged up with a wrist injury, but we talked to Eric DeLalla of DenverBroncos.com on our podcast, and he was also talking about Von Miller and his ability to dip and bend, because when you look at him just on TV or in person, he's not a monster, you know what I mean? But his speed is premier. His speed is unbelievable. The way he dips and bends is also what makes Von Miller so great.
And a point here, Greens, is that the Jets, while Brandon Shell might see the most of them, Jets were clear about it in the locker room this week, and you were talking to guys, is that they're going to move them all over the place. So at certain points in the game, you're going to see Von Miller lined up over everybody. Everybody's going to see him. And again, it takes a village to stop a Von Miller. So sometimes that's going to mean personnel packages where you're going to have 2 and 3 tight ends. Sometimes that's going to mean the back staying in like a Bilal Powell or Isaiah Crowell to help out. But how do you keep Von Miller on his heels? You pound the rock. And so far this season, you got to give the Broncos a lot of credit, because you asked me about Chubb before. The Broncos have been really good against the run so far. You look at the run splits on both sides of the ball, one of the better outfits in the National Football League.
Well, I spoke with Spencer Long earlier this week, and he said that Derek Wolfe and Domata Peko are really good players, and those 2 guys plug up the middle. And in order for the Jets to win this game, we've talked about it, is that the Jets are going to have to establish a run game. And you actually said on our podcast that you think Bilal Powell is going to have a game.
Listen, here's a stat for you, since you're asking me stat questions. Bilal Powell has scored a touchdown in each of the Jets' last 3 home games. So there's something to keep in mind. And Powell has been one of the Jets' most consistent performers. He continues to show that explosion through the hole. Great vision. I think the green and white are going to need a big day out of 2-9 against the Broncos.
Well, you mentioned the Broncos' interior defense, only 93 yards that they allow per game. That's 8th in the NFL. And last year against the Broncos, when the Jets went to Mile High, Bilal Powell only had 50 yards, and the Jets didn't run the ball well. But this week, with Denver coming to town, and after we saw what happened in Jacksonville, where the Jets couldn't find a rhythm, and then Sam ended up throwing a lot more than I think what Jets fans wanted to see and Jets coaching staff wanted to see, is how do you anticipate the split between Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell to ride out this weekend?
I got no idea. Jeremy Bates was clear about it, though. He said that what we have to do is we have to have positive things happen on first and second down, because then that's going to set you up in third and manageable situations. Last week in Jacksonville, what happened was the Jaguars, as a bee flies by me, the Jaguars dominated the time of possession because they had the long drives, and Jets defensively couldn't get off the field on third down. Conversely, they had trouble extending, sustaining drives. They got to make hay on first and second down. And that doesn't necessarily mean just running the football, because Jeremy Bates was clear about that as well, because if they're loading the box on you, you'll have to pass over their heads at times, and also you can use the backs out of the backfield. So Jeremy Bates is going to do it any way possible.
All right, real quick here on the other side of the ball here, the other team rather, is the Denver Broncos have a pair of rookie running backs who have really taken the NFL by storm. And even though we don't get a lot of Rocky Mountain news out here in the East Coast, is these two guys and Philip Lindsay, who's an undrafted rookie out of CU Boulder.
Yep.
Then you get Royce Freeman from Oregon in the third round. These two guys both average over 5 yards a pop. The Jets are going to have to slow them down on defense.
The Broncos have rushed the ball well in every game this season. Their lowest total so far was an 120-yard effort against the Baltimore Ravens, and that came during a loss, and they averaged 5 yards a carry. John Elway was laughing about it. He's happy that Philip Lindsay wasn't drafted. That's the all-time yardage leader in terms of all-purpose yards at Colorado. And he was considered a burner, but he showed a lot of toughness here early in his career. And then Vance Joseph said this week, we got to get Royce Freeman the ball more. He's a guy who makes positive things happen. He'll push it inside the trenches, inside the tackles. Lindsey's the more burner, but like you said, Freeman is the guy, the bigger guy, the stouter guy, the physical guy who is picking up positive yards. Yeah, that's a story for the Broncos here early in the year. Third in the National Football League in rushing, 148 yards a game. The Jets have been good against the run, though. Predominantly, they've been good against the run through the first quarter of the season.
So Philip Lindsay is listed at 5'8", 190. Royce Freeman 6 foot 238. And Philip Lindsay actually became the first player in NFL history to be an undrafted rookie and have over 100 scrimmage yards in his first 2 games. And these two guys very productive in college. Royce Freeman over 5,000 yards rushing, Lindsay over 3,000. But I know we're talking about these two guys a lot, but what's funny is that the Broncos, personnel-wise, their talent is really on the outside in Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and Cortland Sutton, who's a second-round rookie out of SMU.
Sutton, when you look at the Broncos, the other thing they're doing offensively, they're one of the best teams in the National Football League in terms of explosion plays, of plays 20-plus yards. You mentioned Sutton, the rookie out of SMU. He's a big-bodied receiver. He's made some plays down the field. Emmanuel Sanders, the former Pittsburgh Steeler, he's their guy in terms of yards per catch. That jumps out at you. Demaryius Thomas so far this season, he had a big game against the Jets last December. I think he had 8 catches, 93 yards.
That would be correct, and a touchdown.
But Greens, when you look at his numbers this year, averaging less than 9 yards per reception, and Case Keenum had him wide open against a cover 2 Monday Night Football. If he hits that ball, the Broncos are 3-1. Keenum's been up and down so far early this season, about 61% passer with 3 touchdowns, but 6 interceptions. So if the Jets can take care of the run, I think they're going to have opportunities in that defensive backfield to make some plays on the football.
Even though Demaryius Thomas doesn't have a lot of yards this season, how about this? Here's a stat for you. Cortland Sutton, the rookie, talk about these chunk plays. Well, Cortland Sutton only has 8 receptions, 142 yards. He's averaging 17.8 yards per catch. But earlier this week, I spoke to Morris Claiborne and talked about Demaryius Thomas and this Broncos receiving core.
And we're still rolling
this week against the Broncos. A very tough wide receiver duo in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. What do you know about them, and what? Here with cornerback Morris Claiborne. Morris, this week against the Broncos, a very tough wide receiver duo in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. What do you know about them, and what have you seen from film?
You got two good receivers. two different type of receiver. They can do different things. With Demarius, a bigger guy, bigger body, but overall they're two, well put together receivers.
Demarius is someone that you lined up against last year. This Broncos team, this team played last year. How different is this team from last time when you played the Broncos compared to now?
Pretty much everything, kind of stays the same. Some new stuff here and there, or different things that they're trying to do. But one of the biggest things I see that they're doing this year is, they're putting their guys everywhere. Like Demarius, he's not just playing in one spot. So you have to look for him, to be moving all over the formation, to get him the ball and stuff like that. Which, I'll take advantage of that too if I had him.
With Case Keenum now, the quarterback of the Broncos, how different does this offense look?
You got a guy who's not afraid to throw it down the field, and a guy who's not afraid to put it in those little small windows, and a guy who's not scared to take chances, to put the ball in the air.
And then lastly here is, as a secondary, not the best performance by any stretch of the imagination last week. What does this unit need to do to tighten up loose screws and then effectively play against the Broncos?
We just have to do our job, as individuals, and, we have to, put it all together. I feel like sometimes, we overdo things. We overdo some of the small things that make us, overdo and don't do our job right. I feel like if all of us, focus on what we have to do, the task at hand, and everybody go out to go execute what they have to go execute, I feel like we'll be fine. This is a long season. We got a long time. So all we can do is just try to get better from the last game and go out and get a win this week.
Great. Thanks, Morris.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Welcome back to practice today, presented by SiriusXM. Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen, live here at Florham Park, and this is the deal. Earlier in the show, I gave a stat question. In the game with EA, since 2015, Leonard Williams, 68 QB hits, 6th in the AFC. Who are the other 5 guys that precede him?
Number 1, Von Miller, Denver Broncos. Right?
He's up there. He's tied for first.
Terrell Suggs, Baltimore Ravens.
No.
Really?
Really? This is why we are here to hit the hard-hitting question.
J.J. Watt, Houston Texans.
J.J. Watt is 7th on the list. He is behind Leonard Williams by 1 quarterback hit.
Melvin Ingram, L.A. Chargers.
He's up there.
Justin Houston, Kansas City Chiefs.
I don't believe Justin Houston
What do you mean you don't believe it?
Is on the list. I can tell you who's on the list.
All right, I didn't have too much time to prepare for this. So
Carlos Dunlap is on the list, number 1, tied for first, Cincinnati.
Bengals.
Geno Atkins is on the list, tied for 3rd with Calais Campbell. Melvin Ingram you got, Leonard Williams, and the 2 guys behind Leo are J.J. Watt and Cameron Wake. What do you think about them numbers, EA?
I'm really shocked that Suggs isn't a part of that. And Justin Houston as well. But, hey, listen, that just tells you what Cincinnati has up front. The Jets don't see the Bengals this year, but, hey, they could make hay in the AFC North. They're right up there right now. I believe they're 3-1. Maybe they win that division. It's going to be between them and Baltimore.
Okay, it's time for the 2-minute drill. EA, if the Jets want to win Sunday, you have to strike early.
Yeah, the Jets have to strike early, Greens. They've scored 7 points in the first quarter over the first quarter of the season. They've been coming out a little bit slow out of the gates. What you want to see from them is to get a lead and get some balance offensively, not be forced into a pass situation. Also, let's see how the defense operates with the lead. The Jets, this is the first of a 3-game homestand. You get a lead, you get the crowd involved early, and then things can snowball from there.
Through 4 weeks, the Broncos have a pair of very effective running backs, both rookies, Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. If the Jets want to have some success and play from ahead, you got to stop those guys.
The Broncos are 3rd in the National Football League. They're averaging 148 yards on the ground so far this season. Case Keenum has 6 interceptions, though. If the Jets can contain that run game, they'll have opportunities to make plays in the defensive backfield. Conversely, when the Jets have been moving the ball offensively, Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell have been on track. If the Jets can get that kind of balance going for themselves, they're going to be able to sustain drives because they'll be in 3rd in manageable situations. Look for the Jets to try to establish the run game early.
Sam Darnold, a mixed bag through 4 games. What does he need to do to come away with a victory this Sunday?
He just got to be himself. He said it all along that I think it's really close. I'm seeing the field better. I'm recognizing what they're doing in terms of coverage. I'm going through my progressions quicker. The game is coming quicker, coming faster to him. And he said, the fans deserve wins. I think Sam Darnold plans on giving the green and white faithful a favorable outcome to start this 3-game run.
Again, Jets-Broncos Week 5 to kick off a 3-game homestand at MetLife Stadium. But not only is there practice today, there's also Pregame Central presented by Pepsi. That is EA and Anthony Becht at 11 o'clock from MetLife.
And you're going to be joined by the Big Show.
The WWE superstar, The Big Show. That will be quite the height discrepancy. I'm not looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to speaking with him.
Listen, Greens, bring out the ladder and challenge him to a ladder match. Do the interview with the ladder, and then bring the ladder down on the Big Show.
All right, you got to stay tuned for that. And then, of course, Mondays, EA breaks it down with Eric Coleman, whatever happens on Sunday. And that's all we have from practice today, presented by SiriusXM.